The classroom fell silent as instructor moved to the front of the room. His scales gleamed under the harsh lights, each one reflecting a different shade of deep green. But it was the mask that drew every eye. Carved from some ancient bone and decorated with silver inlays, it covered the upper half of his face completely. The other instructors wore masks too, but was special. 3 centuries old, they said, a mark of his status among the. Reeves sat in the third row, her hands folded on the desk in front of her. 6 months she had been here at the Integration Academy. 6 months of learning to bow her head, to speak only when spoken to accept that Earth had lost the war and this was the price. Around her sat other cadets, some human, most alien. All of them had learned the same lessons. Keep quiet. Show respect. Never ever challenge an instructor. They had conquered 40 worlds before Earth. They knew how to break a species' spirit without breaking their bodies. The Integration Academies were proof of that. Take the young ones, the smart ones, and teach them that resistance was foolish. Teach them that the Concordance way was the only way. Eventually, the rest would follow. Today we examine the campaign, said. His voice came out smooth and cold like water over stone. A perfect example of Concordance efficiency. Study the numbers. Observe the timeline. This is how proper integration occurs. The screen behind him lit up with data, population counts, military deployments, casualty figures. Eyes moved across the numbers and something twisted in her stomach. She had seen reports like this before, back on Earth, in the old history files from before the Concordance came. She recognized the pattern. The chose defiance, continued. They were warned 3 times. They fired on our diplomatic vessels. The response was proportional and necessary. Within 6 standard months, integration was complete. His hand rose before she could stop it. The movement felt automatic, drilled into her by years of schooling back home. Ask questions. Seek understanding. She forgot for just a moment that those rules didn't apply here. His head turned. Behind the mask, his eyes fixed on her. Cadet Reeves, you have something to contribute. Yes, sir. Her voice came out steady. I have a question about the civilian casualty ratio. Several cadets shifted in their seats. One of the other humans shot her a warning look, but had already started and there was no taking it back now. The data shows that approximately 60% of casualties were noncombatants. In the history of Earth conflicts, we found that ratios above 30% typically indicated either poor tactical planning or deliberate targeting of civilian populations, which was the case here. The room went very still. Somewhere in the back, someone's breathing became audible, didn't move for several long seconds. Then his tail, which had been coiled loosely around his chair, began to lash back and forth. Slow at first, then faster. They were warned, he said. His voice remained level, but something underneath it had changed. They chose to position military installations near population centers. They used their own civilians as shields. The Concordance does not engage in imprecise warfare, Cadet Reeves. Every action was calculated. Yes, sir, but Earth history suggests that calculated actions can still be questioned. We had entire frameworks for evaluating proportional response. The Geneva Conventions, the rules of war, concepts of just combat. Based on those frameworks, a 60% civilian casualty rate would indicate. Earth's frameworks are irrelevant. His tail struck the floor with a sharp crack. Earth's frameworks led to centuries of internal conflict, endless wars, genocides. The Concordance brought order to chaos. We do not require lectures on morality from a species that nearly destroyed itself. Felt heat rise in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. I'm not lecturing, sir. I'm asking for clarification. If the goal was integration, wouldn't preserving more of the population have made that easier? Dead civilians can't be integrated. Their deaths would only. Enough. The word cut through the air like a blade. Rose from his chair, his full height impressive even by standards. He moved towards desk with the fluid grace of a predator. The other cadets pressed themselves back in their seats, trying to become invisible. You presume to question concordance tactics. You presume to apply your primitive moral concepts to decisions made by beings far more advanced than yourself. You presume, Cadet Reeves, that your opinion matters. He stood over her now, could see the details of his mask up close. The silver inlays formed patterns that might have been writing in some ancient language. The bone was yellowed with age but perfectly smooth. Behind the eye holes, his reptilian eyes were cold and flat. Humans, he continued, are perhaps the most emotional species we have encountered. Your feelings overwhelm your logic. Your impulses control your actions. This is why you needed conquering. This is why you need us to guide you toward civilization. Met his eyes. She thought about the last 6 months, the lessons in obedience, the lectures on human inferiority, the constant message that Earth's cultures, Earth's achievements, Earth's entire history added up to nothing compared to concordant superiority. She thought about her younger brother, still back home, who would grow up being taught that his species was inherently flawed. Sir, I disagree. The classroom seemed to hold its breath. No one disagreed with an instructor, especially not out loud. His tail lashed twice faster now. You disagree. Yes, sir. Humans aren't controlled by emotions. We learn to control them. Every child on Earth is taught not to hit back when someone hits them first. Every soldier learns to stay calm under fire. We feel things strongly, but we choose how to act on those feelings. That's not weakness. That's discipline. His hand moved faster than expected. The backhand caught her across the left side of her face, snapping her head to the right. The sound echoed in the silent room. Pain bloomed across her cheek and mouth, sharp and immediate. She tasted copper on her tongue. Corrective action, said calmly, as permitted under Academy Regulation 12.7. Dangerous insubordination must be addressed immediately. His head remained turned to the side. Blood welled up from where her teeth had cut the inside of her lip. She could feel it starting to drip down her chin. The pain was real and bright, but underneath it something else was building. Not rage exactly, something colder, more focused. She had been hit before. Not like this, not by an authority figure, but she had trained in combat sports back on Earth. She knew what it felt like to take a strike. She knew what came after, that split second where your body wanted to react, wanted to hit back, wanted to hurt the person who hurt you. And she knew what it took to control that impulse. Except she wasn't on Earth anymore. The rules that said hitting back was wrong, those were Earth rules, and had just proven that concordance rules were different. Turned her head back to face him. Blood ran from her split lip. Her left eye was already starting to swell, but her right eye was clear and steady, locked on the instructor's masked face. She had been trained not to hit back, but she had also been trained how to hit, and there was a difference between choosing not to do something and not being able to do it. Her hand came up in a sharp, precise palm strike. No wind-up, no telegraphing, just pure economical motion driven by every hour she had spent in training back home. The heel of her palm caught mask dead center, right between the eye holes. The sound was like ice cracking on a winter lake. The ancient bone split along a fault line hadn't even known was there. The silver inlay scattered in different directions. Pieces of the mask tumbled away from his face, falling to the floor with small clicking sounds. Stood frozen. His bare face was visible now, revealed for the first time in decades. The scales around his eyes and snout were paler than the rest, marked with old scars that crisscrossed the skin. One scar ran from just below his left eye down to his jaw. Another curved across his forehead. These were old wounds, probably from his youth, hidden behind the mask for so long that most people had forgotten faces could be. But it wasn't the scars that held everyone's attention. It was the expression. Shock, yes, but underneath that was something none of the cadets had ever seen on an instructor's face before. Humiliation, vulnerability, fear. Stood slowly. Blood still dripped from her chin, pattering onto the desk. She didn't wipe it away. She kept her eyes on his now exposed face and spoke clearly enough for everyone in the room to hear. "You said emotions make us weak, sir, but I think your masks make you predictable. You hide behind symbols of authority because without them, you're just another being who can be hurt, just like the rest of us." His hand moved to his face, touching the bare scales as if he couldn't quite believe the mask was gone. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Around the classroom, cadets were staring, their eyes wide. Some looked terrified. Others looked amazed. A few looked like they were trying very hard not to smile. Waited. She didn't run. She didn't apologize. She had just committed what was probably the worst violation possible in the Integration Academy, and she knew there would be consequences. But for this moment, standing there with blood on her face and pieces of an ancient mask scattered at her feet, she felt something she hadn't felt in 6 months. She felt like a human. The security team arrived within minutes. They were, like most of the academy staff, but younger than and without the ornate masks. They wore simple face coverings that marked them as enforcers rather than teachers. 2 of them grabbed arms while a third used some kind of scanning device on her, probably checking for weapons or contraband. They didn't find anything because there was nothing to find. Hadn't planned this. She hadn't smuggled in some Earth weapon or sabotage device. She had simply hit back when someone hit her first, using nothing but her own hand and the training she'd received in a gym back in Seattle years ago. That seemed to confuse them more than anything. One security officer kept reviewing the footage from the classroom cameras, watching it over and over. Could see the screen from where she sat in the detention cell. The video showed her getting hit, her head snapping to the side, then her palms strike so fast it was almost a blur. Frame-by-frame analysis showed the whole sequence took less than 1/10 of a second from the moment his hand made contact with her face to the moment her palm struck his mask. "Impossible," the security officer muttered. "Human reaction time shouldn't allow for this." His partner leaned in to look at the screen. Maybe she anticipated the strike. "No, look at her body language before he hits her. She's not tensed, not prepared. This is pure reaction." They talked as if couldn't hear them, as if she was some kind of specimen to be studied rather than a person sitting right there. She stayed quiet and listened. The more they talked, the more she understood how deeply she had disturbed their worldview. The Concordants had studied humans, of course. They had analyzed Earth's history, its cultures, its military capabilities. They had concluded that humans were emotional, impulsive, and prone to violence. Dangerous, yes, but in a chaotic, uncontrolled way. Easy to predict once you understood the patterns. But what had done didn't fit the pattern. She had controlled her violence with precision. She had channeled emotion into action without letting it overwhelm her judgment. She had turned restraint into a weapon. Commander arrived 3 hours later. He was older than the other had seen, his scales darker and his movements more deliberate. His mask was even more elaborate than had been, covered in gold rather than silver, with jewels set into the bone. It marked him as the Academy's director, the highest authority in this place. He dismissed the security officers and stood outside cell, studying her in silence. Stood up, her training telling her to show respect to a superior officer, even if that officer represented an occupying force. Her lip had stopped bleeding, but her face was swollen and bruised on the left side. She probably looked terrible. "Cadet Reeves," said finally. His voice was deeper than rougher. "Do you understand the severity of what you have done?" "Yes, sir." "You have destroyed a 300-year-old ceremonial mask. You have assaulted a superior officer. You have disrupted the order and discipline of this academy. These are not minor infractions." "I understand, sir." "And yet you show no remorse." "Considered that. I regret the necessity, sir, but I don't regret the action itself." His tail moved in a slow, thoughtful pattern. "Explain." "Instructor struck me first, sir. Academy regulations permit corrective action for insubordination, but Earth law would call that assault. I responded in kind. If that was wrong, then his action was also wrong. You can't have it both ways. Earth law is irrelevant here. Then concordance law should be consistent, sir. Either physical violence against cadets is acceptable or it isn't. If it's acceptable for instructors to hit students, then students hitting back should be equally acceptable. If it's not acceptable, then instructor should be disciplined along with me. Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. You are arguing from a position of weakness, cadet. You have no leverage here. I'm not arguing for leverage, sir. I'm pointing out a logical inconsistency. The concordance claims to value order and reason above emotion, but the rules only go one direction. That's not reason. That's just power. The silence that followed was heavy. Watched's face, what she could see of it around the edges of his mask. His eyes were harder to read than human eyes, but she thought she saw something shift in them. The mask you destroyed, he said slowly, was more than decoration. Among the masks represent control, discipline, the ability to master oneself completely. When young come of age, they craft their first mask. As they age and advance, they create new ones, each more elaborate than the last. To wear a mask is to demonstrate that you have transcended base emotion. To lose your mask in public is the deepest shame imaginable. Process that. So instructor's entire identity was built around that mask. Yes, and you shattered it with a single strike, in front of his students, in front of witnesses who will talk. The footage is already spreading through the Academy networks despite our attempts to contain it. I didn't mean to cause him personal shame, sir. I just reacted when he hit me. Ah, but that is precisely what troubles us, Cadet Reeves. You claim you reacted, but your reaction was faster and more precise than our analysis suggests humans are capable of. We have studied your species extensively. We know your strengths and limitations, yet you exceeded those limitations. Thought about how to explain it. Humans spend our whole lives learning to control violent impulses, sir. We're taught from childhood not to hit, not to lash out, not to hurt others even when we're angry or scared. But that training doesn't make us slow or weak. It makes us disciplined. When I hit instructor, I wasn't overcome by emotion. I made a choice to act, and my body executed that choice because I've trained it to respond precisely when I decide to act. You are saying that human restraint is not the absence of capability, but the controlled application of it. Yes, sir, that's exactly what I'm saying. His tail curled in a pattern couldn't interpret. This is concerning. Why, sir? Because the concordance's integration strategy is based on the understanding that humans are emotional and impulsive. If that understanding is incorrect, then our entire approach may be flawed. Said nothing. She could see where this was going, and she didn't want to push too hard, but seemed to be working through the implications on his own. You will remain in detention while we decide your fate, he said finally. The council must be consulted. This incident goes beyond simple academy discipline. Yes, sir. Turned to leave, then paused. One question, cadet. If you were trained your entire life not to hit back, why did you? What made this situation different? Met his eyes through the mask. Because instructor's lesson was wrong, sir. He tried to teach me that my emotions made me weak, that my humanity was inferior. But he was wrong. And sometimes, when someone is teaching the wrong lesson, the only way to correct them is to show them directly why they're wrong. Even if it costs you everything. Even then, sir. Because if we don't stand up for the truth, we lose something more important than safety or comfort. We lose ourselves. Studied her for another moment, then left without another word. Sat back down on the cell's bench and touched her swollen face carefully. It hurt, but it was a clean pain. Honest. She thought about what would come next. Punishment, certainly. Maybe severe punishment. The concordance didn't tolerate defiance, and she had them in the most direct way possible. But she also thought about the security officer's confusion, about troubled questions, about the footage that was apparently spreading despite attempts to stop it. She had broken a mask, just one mask on one instructor's face, but sometimes that was enough. Sometimes one crack was all it took to make people question whether the thing they'd been taught to revere was really as solid as they'd believed. Closed her eyes and waited to see what would happen next. 3 days passed before saw anyone besides the security officer who brought her meals. The cell was small but not uncomfortable. There was a bench that served as a bed, a basic sanitation unit, and nothing else. No windows, no screens, no way to know what was happening outside. But she could hear things, voices in the corridor, sometimes raised in argument, footsteps at odd hours. Once, she heard what sounded like something breaking, followed by shouting in a language she didn't recognize. The academy was reacting to what she'd done, but she couldn't tell how. On the morning of the fourth day, returned. He was alone this time, without guards or security officers. He stood outside her cell for a long moment before speaking. "The footage leaked," he said. "Despite our best efforts at containment, someone transmitted it beyond the Academy network. Multiple someones, actually. It has spread across 7 systems so far. We believe it will reach at least 20 systems by the end of this week." Stood up. "I didn't leak it, sir. We know it was other cadets, human and non-human alike. Several species have shared the footage with in particular, seem quite interested in what you did." The species whose integration she had questioned. Stomach tightened. "What does that mean for me, sir?" "It means your punishment must be carefully considered. The Concordance Council has been debating for 3 days. Some want you executed as an example. Others want you rehabilitated. A few have suggested studying you to understand how you moved so quickly." "And what do you want, sir?" His tail moved in that slow, thoughtful pattern again. "I want to understand what we have gotten wrong about humans. I have supervised integration for 40 years, Cadet Reeves. I have seen dozens of species brought into the Concordance. Most resist at first, but they learn. They adapt. They come to see that our way brings peace and order. But humans are different. You resist in ways we don't expect. You comply on the surface while maintaining some core of defiance underneath. We thought it was simply emotional immaturity. Now I wonder if it's something else." Chose her words carefully. "May I speak freely, sir?" "I doubt I could stop you. Humans don't see compliance and defiance as opposites. We see them as tools. We comply when it serves our interests or when fighting would be pointless. But we never stop evaluating the situation. We never stop looking for the moment when defiance becomes possible. It's not emotional. It's strategic." "You are saying humans are more dangerous than we believed." "I'm saying humans are different than you believed, sir. Danger is just one aspect of that difference." Was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was soft. "The Council has made its decision. You are to be transferred to the for corrective rehabilitation. You will learn proper respect far from Earth, far from other humans who might sympathize with your actions. The process typically takes 1 to 3 years." Felt her heart sink, but she kept her face neutral. "When do I leave?" "In 2 days. The transport is being prepared now. Commander has requested to oversee your rehabilitation personally." That surprised her. "Why?" "I asked him the same question. He said he needs to understand how you bested him. He needs to know if what you represent is unique or if all humans possess this capacity. And if all humans do, then the Concordance has made a serious miscalculation." Moved closer to the cell barrier. "I am telling you this because I believe you should know what comes next. The rehabilitation will not be pleasant. Thee is not kind to those who have shamed instructors, but you will survive it if you are as disciplined as you claim." "Thank you for the warning, sir." "It is not kindness, Cadet. It is pragmatism. I want you to survive because I want to learn from you. The concordance must adapt if we are to maintain order, and adaptation requires understanding." He turned to leave, then paused just as he had before. "Your actions have inspired others, you should know. There have been 3 incidents at other academies in the past 2 days. Cadets destroying instructor masks, citing your example. We are calling it the mask incident phenomenon. You have become a symbol." Didn't know what to say to that. She hadn't meant to inspire anyone. She had just reacted. "That makes you more dangerous than any weapon, Cadet Reeves. Weapons can be confiscated. Symbols cannot." After left, sat down and tried to process what she'd heard. 3 incidents. 3 other cadets brave or foolish enough to challenge their instructors directly. And the footage spreading across multiple systems, seen by species she'd never heard of, interpreted in ways she couldn't predict. She thought about her brother back on Earth, about what he would think when he heard what she'd done. Would he be proud? Scared? Angry that she'd put herself at risk? She wished she could tell him that she was sorry for worrying him, but that she wasn't sorry for the action itself. Because was right. She had become a symbol. Not intentionally, not by choice, but symbols didn't require consent. They existed in the space between action and interpretation, growing larger than the person who inspired them. Touched her face where had struck her. The swelling had gone down, but the bruise remained. In a way, she was glad for it. Physical evidence that what happened was real, not some dream or fantasy. She had been hit, and she had hit back, and the consequences were still unfolding. 2 days until the transport. 2 days until she would be taken to an alien world far from Earth to face rehabilitation under the supervision of the instructor she had shamed. It should have terrified her. Maybe it did, somewhere deep down, but mostly she felt curious. If wanted to understand humans, then she would teach him. Not the lesson the concordance wanted him to learn, but the real lesson. The one about what happened when you pushed people too far. The one about how restraint and capability weren't opposites but complements. The one about why masks, no matter how ancient or sacred, were still just masks. Lay back on the bench and closed her eyes. Rest now, think later. Survive first, then see what came after. The broken mask was just the beginning. The transport ship was smaller than had expected. Just a cargo vessel with a few passenger compartments added on, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. 2 guards escorted her aboard, their movements professional and impersonal. They didn't speak to her, didn't even look at her directly. To them, she was cargo. Dangerous cargo, maybe, but still just something to be moved from one place to another. The compartment they locked her in was barely larger than her cell at the academy. A narrow bench, a sanitation unit, a small viewport showing nothing but stars. Sat down and strapped herself in as the ship's engines rumbled to life. Through the viewport, she watched the academy grow smaller, then disappear as the ship turned toward deep space. 3 days to the guards had told her. 3 days of isolation, of not knowing what awaited her at the end of the journey. She should have been afraid. Instead, she felt something else. Not quite peace, not quite defiance. Something in between. The ship shuddered as it entered faster than light travel. The stars outside stretched into lines, then faded into the strange not color of FTL space. Closed her eyes and tried to remember everything she knew about them from her academy lessons. They were an old species, one of the founding members of the concordance. They valued control and discipline above all else. Their society was built on hierarchy, with each individual's rank determined by their ability to master themselves and others. The masks were central to their culture, marking the transition from emotional youth to disciplined adulthood. What she had done, breaking's mask, wasn't just an assault. It was a fundamental violation of everything they believed about themselves. No wonder they wanted to rehabilitate her personally. She had challenged their entire worldview. The thought should have worried her more than it did. On the second day of travel, something changed. was eating the tasteless ration pack the guards had provided when she felt the ship lurch. The engines made a sound they hadn't made before, a high-pitched whine that set her teeth on edge. Then the artificial gravity flickered, and for a moment she was floating. Alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside her compartment. Pressed her face to the small window in the door, trying to see what was happening. Shapes moved past, too fast to identify. Shouts echoed through the ship, words in languages she didn't understand. Then someone appeared at her door. Not a guard, something else. A being covered in what looked like gray fur with 4 arms and too many eyes. It pressed something against the door's lock mechanism. Sparks flew. The door slid open. "Come," the being said in accented but clear standard concordance language. "Quickly, no time." "Didn't move, who are you?" "Friend, maybe. Come now or stay prisoner, choose." The ship lurched again, more violently this time. Heard an explosion somewhere in the distance. Whatever was happening, staying in her cell wasn't going to be safe. She made a decision and stepped out into the corridor. The being grabbed one of her arms with 2 of its 4 hands and pulled her toward an airlock. Could see now that other beings were moving through the ship. Some looked, with their distinctive crystalline exoskeletons. Others were species she didn't recognize. All of them moved with purpose, with military precision. "What's happening?" asked as they ran. "Rescue, maybe foolish rescue, but rescue." "Why, you don't even know me." The being looked at her with several eyes at once. "Everyone knows Mask Breaker. Everyone sees footage. Some of us remember what it means to break chains." They reached the airlock. Through the window could see another ship docked against the transport. Smaller, sleeker, clearly built for speed rather than cargo. The being pushed her toward it. "Wait," said. "The guards, the other prisoners, are they?" "Guards are contained, no killing if possible. We are not concordants, we try better." Step through the airlock into the other ship. Inside, more beings were moving equipment, checking systems, preparing for departure. One of them, a female whose exoskeleton gleamed in the ship's lights, turned to look at. "Welcome aboard, human. We should leave now, yes." "Yes," said, because what else could she say? "Thank you, I think." "Thank us later. If we survive, we talk. If we don't survive, at least you die free." The ship detached from the transport with a clang that resonated through the hull. Grabbed a handrail as the vessel spun and accelerated. Through the nearest viewport, she saw the Concordance transport growing smaller. It wasn't exploding, wasn't even badly damaged. Whatever this rescue had been, it had been surgical. "Patrol coming," someone shouted from the cockpit. 3 minutes to intercept." "Can we jump?" asked. "Working on calculations. Need 2 minutes minimum." "Then we have problem." Pulled herself forward toward the cockpit. "Can I help?" Crystalline face turned toward her. "You have pilot training." "No, but I have worked navigation systems. Different ships, but the principles are similar." "Then help, yes, we need all hands." The next 2 minutes were chaos. Strapped into a jump seat and pulled up a secondary navigation console. The interface was alien, but she'd spent 6 months at the academy learning concordance systems. She could read the displays, could see what the pilot was trying to calculate. Jump coordinates, accounting for nearby gravity wells, finding a vector that would take them far away from patrol routes. "They're hailing us," someone reported, demanding we stop and return the prisoner. "Don't answer," ordered, "just fly." His fingers moved across the console. There, a calculation error. The pilot had missed a micro-adjustment for stellar drift. She corrected it and sent the updated coordinates forward. "Got it," the pilot shouted, "jumping in 10 seconds." The patrol ships were visible now, 3 dark shapes against the stars. Weapon ports were opening on their hulls. Knew what came next. Disable the engines first, then board. They wouldn't destroy the ship if they could avoid it. Too many questions would come from destroying a vessel that held the now famous Mask Breaker. But they didn't get the chance. The rescue ship lurched, reality twisted in a way that made stomach rebel, and then they were gone. FTL space wrapped around them and the patrol disappeared. For a moment no one spoke, then laughed, a sound like crystals chiming together. We live, against all sense we live. Others joined the laughter, felt the tension drain out of her shoulders. They had escaped. She was free, sort of. She was on an unknown ship full of unknown aliens who had just committed an act of war against the Concordance to rescue her. This was going to be complicated. So, she said once the celebration had died down, maybe someone should explain what just happened and where we're going. Settled into a seat across from. Up close, there was striking. Her exoskeleton reflected light in rainbow patterns, and her compound eyes saw in multiple directions at once. She was beautiful in an utterly alien way. What happened is simple, said. We saw footage of you breaking mask. We saw symbol of their authority shattered. We saw humans stand up when everyone else sits down. And we decided this human should not disappear into rehabilitation. But why? I'm nobody. I'm just a cadet who lost her temper. No, leaned forward. You are human who showed galaxy that can be beaten, that their symbols are fragile, that one person with courage can break what seems unbreakable. This is important. This is what resistance needs to see. Process that. You're part of a resistance movement. Many resistance movements, who remember before concordance, who never wanted integration, dozens of species who join not by choice but by force. We all work separately but we watch each other, we share information, and when we saw your footage we all agreed, this human matters. I didn't mean to start anything. Best symbols never mean to be symbols, they just are, gestured around the ship. We are taking you somewhere safe, secret place where concordance cannot follow. There you will meet others, leaders of various movements. They want to learn from you. Learn what? How to hit people. Know how to stand up, how to turn restraint into weapon, how to be disciplined and defiant at same time. These things are not natural to most species, but humans seem to understand them. Thought about that? Where is this safe place? Best if you don't know details yet, but is called Sanctuary. Hidden system, old mining colony that concordance abandoned centuries ago. Many people live there now. Refugees, rebels, anyone who wants to be free of concordance control. The ship hummed around them, carrying further from everything she knew. Earth, the academy, even the predetermined path of rehabilitation. She should have felt lost. Instead, she felt something like purpose. Can I ask you something? Said. Yes. When you saw the footage, what did you see? What made you decide I was worth risking your lives for?